Hello, everyone. I'm David Morris, publisher of Lake Drive Books, where we publish books that help you heal, grow, and discover. And I've got an author with me today that I think is all about that. I'm so glad that Lemuel Blackett, who's here with me, is publishing a book that is about helping you heal, grow, and discover. How are you doing today, Lem?
I'm doing well, David. I cannot complain about anything, and I am delighted to be with you on this interview.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. I like your shirt, by the way. It,
Oh,
it,
thank
it's
you.
it's a good one. I'm just like
Thank
doing the
you.
black publisher thing these days.
That's it. Well, we're
Yeah,
complimenting black and white, see?
yeah. um, well, just I mean, we've known each other for quite a while. We used to work together actually
Yes,
at Guideposts magazine. I was in the book division, and you were in outreach and
that's
prayer
correct.
ministry,
Yes.
which is a big part of that company, still
Mhm.
is. And that was way back in like the Northeast days for us both.
Yes, yes,
And I'm
yes.
now
Those
in Grand
wonderful.
Rapids, Michigan. You're in, where are
San
you?
Diego, San Diego, California.
Yeah, yeah,
Yay!
yeah.
Warm weather.
Which was a big change for you.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just been a delight to be able to. I'm glad you looked me up out of the blue one day, and it was just like, okay, let's figure something out here. And
Yes.
we've come to a point in the journey that where we can now celebrate that you have this amazing book out called Help, I'm Dealing with Trauma,
Yes.
Real Talk, Real Encouragement, and Real Healing.
Yes.
And it's really quite a book. It doesn't pull any punches, and it talks very straight. It's helpful. You do a lot of really good things in this book. Before we get to that, though, I guess I just want to say, tell viewers here briefly, what do you do? Um,
Well, currently, I am working as a fundraiser. I do donor and corporate relations for Interfaith Services. And Interfaith was started in 1979. A group of ministers from different denominations came together to really hone in and deal with the homeless situation in North County, San Diego. So, a city called Escondido. So I've been with the organization for 2.5 weeks now,
yeah.
and it has, I know, just a short time, but it has been an amazing journey. And this is the reason my family and I moved to California, because we wanted to know, how can we help the homeless? We believe that we are called to help them. And my wife got connected first with Interfaith. And, her first week, she came home just beaming like, honey, I'm not going to rest until I get you into interfaith.
Oh,
And
wow.
just
Yeah.
a few months later, they called me, interviewed me, and I'm here, and it is an amazing journey so far. I'm delighted to be with the organization.
And you have training as a pastor and a lot of experience as a pastor as well. So you're
That is correct.
bringing that experience to to a social service interfaith organization, but also there's like a spiritual element to it, even though it might not be out on out front facing.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have a faith-based academy. And so we do partner with a lot of churches. We have an associate that goes out and connects with churches so that they could have their volunteers come and help us as we feed the homeless, clothe the homeless, find them housing,
Yeah,
and things like that. So,
yeah,
as you said, I have over 20 years of ministry experience. And so I use that as well in my position here in the faith.
yeah. Well, and I bet that your book about trauma is not unrelated to this work.
That's correct.
It
That's
helps
correct.
inform things. Now
Yeah.
that's a word we've been hearing a lot lately,
Mhm.
trauma. And I think it's all about just recognizing that your past has an influence on who you are. And
Correct.
you can't just like forget about it. You can't just get away from it.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good thing that we continue to hear about that. But um, you know, why did you decide to take on this topic and write a book about trauma in particular? What do you think? What do you think led
Well,
to that?
I originally I was going to look at it from a psychological perspective. And then I kind of sat back. I was like, well, you know, you're not a psychologist, but you have experienced trauma and you have dealt with it in your own way. So I just really went back to the recesses of my mind and just said, you know what? Let me bring to the forefront all of these really scary things that happened to me in my childhood and some very aggressive and unfortunate things that happened in my teenage and adult years. And I just wanted to shine a light on how even someone that is a Christian, a believer, goes through trauma, but it's difficult to deal with it. And sometimes we don't know what to do. And you know, people try to throw Bible verses at you. You know, that's all good and great, but sometimes I don't want to hear a Bible verse. I just want to get through this pain. And I
Yeah.
just want to share with people that there is an opportunity to get through the pain with God, with prayer, and with therapy.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, so I think it's unique because you're a pastor by training. You're a person of
Hmm.
faith, of strong
Yes,
faith,
yes,
and yet this is not a book that has a lot of Bible verses in it.
no,
And
no,
I actually find it really intriguing because I mean, and as you say, you're not a mental health counselor, a professional
correct,
necessarily.
correct. Hmm.
Um, and I think that it's just common in churches and in clergy leadership, people in leadership positions in church,
Hmm.
to not really look directly at mental health issues because, in a way, the Bible doesn't actually talk about them.
Right. You
Um,
know, you know, the Bible, I think it kind of makes reference. So even if you look at Elijah when he was having suicidal thoughts, that was kind of like a mental issue. When you think of the demoniac man that Jesus went and laid hands on and prayed for, those were mental issues. So it really doesn't say mental health and
yeah,
therapy and
yeah,
all of that stuff, but it does share how people dealt with depression, they dealt with trauma, they dealt with mental illness. When you look at Noah, when Noah got off the ark, he went and got drunk. He was
yeah,
dealing with some stuff. He was dealing with some stuff. And
yeah,
I can agree with Noah too. And
yeah,
I'll put it out there. When I've dealt with some stuff, I was like, okay, let me
yeah.
go get some Apple Jack Daniel and deal with it.
Oh no. Yeah. Yeah, but I don't hear
That was
very
just,
many. I don't very hear very many pastors who actually acknowledge that about Noah,
yeah,
or
exactly. They don't.
yeah, or even look at the some of the demon possession and realize, okay, that maybe that's epilepsy going on there
Right.
or something like that.
Hmm.
But you're
Hmm.
saying that it's just the way the culture around the Bible that doesn't call those things outright. But in today's modern world, we actually have words like trauma and
Exactly.
psychology, and we try to put language to it.
Hmm.
And you see your task is kind of bringing this ancient faith of ours that's so sacred
Yes.
and has so much richness to it, to a very
Hmm.
practical matter of living in our world today.
Absolutely.
How do you see people? You talk about a whole bunch of different ways of experiencing trauma
Hmm.
in your book. And I think the idea is often people don't acknowledge the trauma that they've had in their lives. And
Right.
by you going through these different topics, it's sort of like, here's the different ways. Have you thought about this? Can you say more about those different ways?
Yeah, so one of the ways that I experienced trauma was, witnessing domestic violence in the home that I grew up in. When I was a child, like one instance when I was a child, my mother told me that I went to defend her when my father went to slap her. She said, "You jumped off the bed and bit him in the ankle." And he was so confused, like, I can't believe my own son, attacked me. And I yelled out, "Don't you dare touch my mother." And then as I got older, I witnessed my sister's boyfriend abusing her. And I kind of wrote a sign and put it up to the window and told someone that my sister's boyfriend is abusing her, call the police. And then when they came, she denied it, and I was in complete shock. And that really bothered me. Even now, I still kind of have flashbacks. Like, I wish I could have saved her, defended her, but I was young. I was like 12, 13 years old, and I just did not know what to do. And it's really shaped how I am today. Because if I do see someone now, as a grown man, if I do see someone abusing a child or abusing a woman, I'm most likely going to step in, because what I couldn't do back then, I know I could do now. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And so some of those experiences, I think
Mhm.
you make reference in the book that they still can affect you today.
Yes.
Um, our trauma still affects us today. That's the whole point of the book.
Yes.
Um, and so walk us through what you do, and like how do you even notice and acknowledge something's going on with you. Um, and it's just so good to hear you talk about it, because you're talking about it as an everyday person, not as a mental health professional necessarily. You're talking about it as a
Right.
pastor.
Hmm.
It's just so relatable to hear you write about this in your book.
Hmm.
Um, so walk us through a little bit, like what's your thought process, and what are the action steps that you take, more or less.
To really kind of deal with it.
Yeah, if you sense like you're
Yeah.
getting angry about something,
Hmm. Oh, I go for a walk. I go to the gym. I reach out to my therapist, and he kind of like talks me off the ledge, because sometimes I really, I get. I'm still working on it. I'm still a
Yeah,
human being, but sometimes my temper may get the best of me, and I would just need to, kind of go for a run,
yeah,
go to the gym, and just kind of work it out, and recognize that the trauma that I did experience, it's not my fault. I didn't ask for it. I didn't go looking for it. I so happened to encounter it. And certain traumatic events, I was able to manage it. And some of the events, I kind of just lost it. Like, I don't know how to deal with this. I may have said something. I might have reacted in a real, unprofessional way, I should say. But as of now, I really, I have a standing weekly appointment with a counselor that really helps me through.
yeah,
And some days are really good. I make it through, and some days are really bad. Sometimes I still wake up with panic attacks, and I kind of just have to breathe and just focus and gather my thoughts and pray and meditate, or I just go back in the bed and just hug my wife, and that gives me calm. That gives
yeah,
me peace. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You also talk about, with different kinds of trauma. You also talk a little bit about um, church trauma too, or
Yeah.
and I don't want to make you reveal too much behind the scenes that goes on with pastors, but
Hmm.
you've experienced it as a child, but also more or less as an adult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
The church trauma, whew, that was very heartbreaking, because the church is normally a place where you go, you think of it as a safe space.
right.
And in my ministry, I rarely had any of those safe spaces. When I was pastoring my first church, I had, deacons that would go out and question my sexuality and spread real vicious rumors about me, and claim that I was sleeping around. And it was awful. And I confronted them, David, and I was like, how dare you? It's one thing if you want to come and ask me, and I'll be happy to give you an answer. But to make accusations about my sexuality, about my integrity, about my marriage is just unacceptable. And I confronted them, and let them know that you have no place and no right to spread these kind of rumors about someone that is feeding you the word of God. And it really damaged me as a pastor. And after several years of taking that abuse, I had to resign. I had to step
Yeah.
away before I did something that I would regret. And I said, it's safer for everyone if I just leave. And that's what I had to
Yeah.
do. And I had a lot of peace behind it. I share in the book that after I resigned, I slept so long that my wife had to come and wake me up. She thought something was wrong.
Oh,
That's how
wow.
well I was. I slept like a baby
Wow.
because all of the stress and the pressure
Yeah.
was finally off of me.
Yeah.
And
That tells you a lot.
sometimes, yeah, and sometimes you have to walk away. I shared a few things with some colleagues, and it's like, stick it out, pray it out, and you have to know what is best for you, your health, and your family. And when I saw my family suffering, it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it. I said,
Hmm.
I'm leaving. I'm done. If you want to take over and you guys want to lead the church, have
Bring
at
that.
it.
You don't need to be bringing that stress home. Why
No,
do you think,
because
and
they
this
don't
kind of,
deserve it.
yeah, why do you think that that goes on at a church? I mean, it gets at that idea of just, well, just that there's trauma everywhere. But
Mhm,
why do you think uh, people would make accusations about a pastor? I mean, I've been in churches, and
mhm,
I know
mhm.
how things can go
Yeah,
around. But why do you think it gets that way in the first place? What do you think is at work there?
it's because I believe it's all about power. It's
Right.
all about power. And when people feel that they are losing control, they'll do whatever it takes to regain that power and
Yeah.
that control. It's just like American politics. It's
Right.
all about power. It's
It's not
all
just the
about
church.
control.
It's in family life. It's in work life,
Yes.
and that's
Yes.
often what
Yeah.
trauma comes from. Is
Exactly. And you could go in with a pure mind. You could go in with integrity, wanting to really help, wanting to really lead, and people will get upset with you because you are coming in and challenging their culture. You're challenging what they've done for years, and you're pointing out what you're doing is not right.
yeah.
What you're doing is not biblical. What you're doing, you have no integrity in this,
Right.
and you shouldn't be doing that. When you call people out, David, you piss them off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you also have a chapter on racism in this
Yes.
book. Speaking of power
Hmm.
and that, talk about that a little bit too. Because I mean, we can't not talk about it, you know.
Yeah. I shared, a situation when I was on my way to church. So happened to be on my way to church, and a police officer that so happened to be a white female. She kept cutting in front of me on the highway. And I was kind of confused. I'm trying to get to service, and this officer keeps cutting in front of me. And then eventually she pulls behind me and pulls me over and says, are you drinking? Are you under influence? And I'm like, I lose it on. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I was like, you get in front of me, you slow down, you're playing these games on a major highway. And I said, you're only doing this because I'm black, and I really just launch out at her. And then three other police cars show up trying to tell me to calm down. And this is the time, really, if what
And you're
happened back
obviously
in
a
the,
very angry person. I mean, I
yeah,
see it right now, you know.
yeah, I was fired up. I was fired up. And,
Well, I mean,
and,
your
yeah,
demeanor is more of a soft-spoken person. You can just see it
yeah,
here in the video, and it's
yeah.
yeah,
And, let me go back real quick. I'm not angry, but I guess when I'm talking about a particular situation, I am very enthusiastic and passionate about it.
yeah,
But things do upset me,
right,
and that particular thing did. And I think if it had happened today, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I'd be dead. I'd be dead. I'm not sure why they didn't even pull guns, because I got fired up within
yeah,
seconds.
yeah,
And, fast forward, I share about things that happened in former President Trump's administration, how it was just blatant racism, and how it is very traumatic. Even for young black men, young black women, just to be walking down the street, going to the
yeah,
mall, people throwing glass bottles because we're exercising. I mean, that's very traumatic. And then, people try to gaslight and say you're overreacting. It's like,
right.
no, I'm not overreacting. This is real. It's on video, you know. And it's really unfortunate. And, you know, we can have as many conversations as we want around racism, but until we put our words into action, it's going to continue to happen. It's going to
Yeah.
continue to happen.
And that trauma stays with those who are the victims of racism.
Oh,
And it
absolutely.
becomes
Absolutely.
a cycle. And how do you break that cycle?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know that, and that's the thing. I think, you know, and I'm not going to say I'm speaking on behalf of the whole African American or Black community, but when Black people have gone through so much for so many years, and then, you know, I share this in the book, when there was an all-out assault on the Asian community, there
Hmm.
was a bill that was written immediately. There has been no bill to protect the lives of Black people. And that's unfortunate.
In the
That's
same way.
traumatic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it, you know, we start to rehash all of the things our parents, our grandparents, our great
Yeah.
grandparents have gone through. And we
Yeah.
get angry. We get
Yeah.
upset because it
Yeah.
is unfair, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but we do have to find a solution. I
Yeah.
will say that.
Yeah. It's very real. And I think
Hmm.
the tools that you bring in the book, the encouragement is
Hmm.
just, that's what people need on a very street level basis for such a
Yes.
deep seated cultural trauma like that,
Yes. Absolutely.
historical. Um, you say something in the book that's really cool, and I have a little bit of a mental health background myself,
Hmm.
but you say it's important when you're seeking a therapist to find someone who understands you culturally,
Yes.
and that's something that not I don't hear the therapy world, mental health world say that outright, although I'm sure some do. But I think
Hmm.
that that's actually pretty important, especially as a person who has a religious background.
Hmm.
Some, you know, the cultural part of who you are matters in that relationship with a therapist. What's your,
Absolutely.
how did that work for you so well? Why do you say that?
So I remember when I was even considering therapy, there was another pastor. I'm not going to share his name, but he mentioned that he needed a therapist, but he did not go to a Black man as himself. He went to a little Jewish lady, and he said she allowed him to curse, to yell, to vent. And he said because
uh,
she did not, you
yeah.
know, she would not hold it against him, and she would not throw up in his face the things that he's dealing with in the church world. Now that worked for him. That worked for him. But I needed someone that understood me and where I was coming from, and
Yeah.
not necessarily the church trauma, but the cultural trauma, the household trauma. And the therapist, when I went to this event where I was the Men's Day speaker, he was one of the workshop leaders, and he says, I only deal with Black men. And, you know, he's from the Caribbean. He started speaking with an accent. And I was like, you know, this man is reading my mail. And he was sharing how what Black men go through,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially when they have parents that are from the Caribbean islands.
Yeah.
And, you know, after we met, he asked me a very important question. He said, what do you want from me? And I said, you know, I don't mind you counseling me and helping me through things in my face.
Hmm.
And, you know, the fact that he posed that question relaxed me. It
Yeah.
allowed me to be comfortable. It
Yeah.
allowed me to open up and share. And I have to say, it's been about 2 years and he's never thrown anything in my face. He kind of reminds me of, you know, if you take this route, you do know it might end in this particular situation. Do you want that? You
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, he's helping me
Yeah.
think, you know, is this the best course of
Yeah.
action? And I just appreciate it. So I do think, speaking from a cultural perspective, that it is key that you find someone that understands your background. You
Yeah.
know, they may not understand all aspects of it,
Right.
but this cultural background, you know,
Right.
the household, the Caribbean
Right.
descendants, you know, that was key for me. I
Right.
needed that.
Right.
And I could say things and he could say things and we start
Yeah.
laughing and he keeps me
Yeah.
on track. So it's been very helpful for me. It
Yeah.
really has.
That's fantastic that you found this
Yeah.
person. And
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Well, we should.
It was like an ordained moment.
Yeah. 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 And he's one of your coping skills.
Yes.
Who we should wrap up here, but who would you like most to read this book? What audiences do you want to be speaking in front of? What kind of folks do you want to reach?
I want to reach. Listen, if I can, I want to reach everyone, but
Yeah.
I definitely want to speak to young teenage men, young teenage boys, older men, Black women, and I would like, also white men and white women too, to kind of understand
Yes.
this cultural background and
Yes.
what we've gone through.
That's what I
Yeah,
got
and I
out of the
think it's
book.
key.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Hmm.
think it's key. And I appreciate as you and I were going through the edits earlier this year. You was like, Lem, this part kind of sounds judgmental or more demanding. I was like, if you show weakness in my family, God help you.
Yeah.
You have to be
Right.
direct. You
Right.
have to be stern with that older
Right.
generation, or they'll eat you alive.
And we made sure
So
that was clear in the book that that's what you're talking
yes,
about. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So I appreciated that we had that ongoing conversation. So I would like for young teenage boys to read it, and older men and women, of course, my white brothers and sisters, just to get an understanding of where, you know, people from my background are coming from.
Great. Great.
Yeah.
Well, this is a very helpful book, and I encourage anyone watching to get a copy, share a copy, gift a copy to folks, leave a review on Amazon.
Mhm.
This is publishing is difficult, and Lem needs your
Yeah.
help to get this word out, and I need your
Yes.
help too. Thank you so much for watching. How can folks find out more about you, Lem?
You could go on my website, lemuelblackett.org, and I have my bio there and information about me. You can also go on Lake Drive Books as well. And you could definitely get the book on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com, and it will be available for sale January 2nd, but you can pre-order today. So go to Amazon, go to Barnes and Noble, order it. Help us,
Well,
please.
great. It'll be a wonderful long journey with this book. You're going to help a lot of people. Thanks so much for making time.
Thank you. Appreciate it, David.